there is a very strong need and very strong space opening up for people who realize this and who come up with locally well adapted, customed food systems, agricultural systems, ecology systems that are globally meaningful as well. So as an entrepreneur or as a social entrepreneur, this is the best time to be a social entrepreneur working in these topics. So if I stop talking and in that sense, like, you know, what should be done, but instead like focusing on what I do, because I am an advocate of, you know, don't talk about what people should do, just say what you do. You know, like in a stoic way, it shows like where you put your words into action. So we started, me and my comrades back home, we started Anatolian Grasslands, a company, a social enterprise. We didn't know there were social enterprise back then. I didn't know about it until 4 years later. I was invited by Ashoka. I was called one day and said, "You are a social entrepreneur. We want you as a fellow." But anyway, we started Anatolian Grasslands, a very grassroots, without any capital, zero knowledge, zero experience actually in agriculture in Turkey. And the idea was simple. We just find out that it's possible to restore ecosystems, regenerate ecosystems by producing food. So we said, well, this is if it's true, this is the best thing that a person, or at least us, we can commit our lives into. So we started with practice. We have been practicing the first examples of regenerative agriculture, of holistic management, especially involving livestock, which is a very essential part of regenerative practices in Turkey. And we started building a small community, a national community around us, because it was also very humanely touching people. And that's something that I believe you can also mobilize a lot in Hungary or elsewhere, like this humans' needs and affiliations with young people, bright young people who can do other things, who are not supposed to do agriculture, right? Choosing to do agriculture as the coolest thing that can be done, the most meaningful thing that can be done, producing the most fundamental need of human beings, while and by regenerating the landscape. What better it can be. And then we followed a very structured and planned, but also in the same time what we call as holistic decision-making framework to extend the impact that we were having. And in 2016, 3 years later, we started this journey. We said, okay, now it's time to create a spin-off directly in the food industry, and we started Safi Mera. Safi Mera in Turkish, or if I translate it into English, will translate directly as grass only. And so it was Turkey's first 100% grass-fed and regenerative meat. But the funny thing is that, like, if you want to start such a company or brand that works with meat, you need to have at least around $1 million. Even if you want to do it in a small scale, because you will need cold chain trucks, you will need a facility with a lot of high-tech good equipment, you will need quite a lot of investment on management and compensating risk, because you are working with such a thing like meat, which goes bad in very, very fast, you know, like you cannot store it, let's say. But we didn't have that money. We rather had $1,000 instead of $1 million. So what we did was to get very innovative, because for us it was not even a decision. You know, we were preaching and doing regenerative agriculture, but when you start doing such a thing, when you come up with a completely new concept and practice, and farmers start to gather around you and say, we want to do this as well, then you need to create a marketing initiative as well, marketing channel as well for them. And a social entrepreneur's mindset, as far as I see, works like this. It needs to be done, then I do it. You know, it's not like it needs to be done, it needs to be done. No, it needs to be done. And if it's not being done, then I do it. That's just the most normal thing in the world. And for an entrepreneur, for a social entrepreneur. So that's what we did. We started that brand, that ecosystem, and we did it in such a way that we gave the responsibility to consumers. We call them prosumers instead of consumers. Producer, consumer, prosumer. And we gave them the responsibility of collecting orders in their neighborhood and giving those orders directly to us, so that we decreased dramatically the amount of drop points. That enabled us to start the process without all this very high and heavy investment. And we went on like this with a few years. And later on, while Anatolian Grassland was also growing, for Safi Mera, we said, okay, now it's time to involve more people. I will say, if you are crazy enough or doing something innovative, the biggest resource, the best resource you will ever get, you will ever have, is people. No money, no nothing, but people. A society, a community, communities around you. So that's what we leveraged. So we went into the community that we created. We gathered around ourselves and said, okay, who wants to be involved in this? And there was good people, very good people, amount of people who were saying, yes, I want to be involved in this as the entrepreneur now. So that's the kind of process we followed. We grown in circles, meaning that we enabled new people to come in to things that we initiated, so they could take it over with through like sweat shares and this kind of models. So they could continue growing it in such a nice way, while we could expand the horizon with other enterprises around it, creating an ecosystem of food, agriculture, and ecology, because those are the same thing. And you need to, if you're innovative, you need to create the whole ecosystem around it. And it's a very hard thing. You need to be, as you were saying, you need to be a farmer, a shepherd, a consultant, a trainer, and all this at the same time. And of course, being all this at the same time is not sustainable in the long term. So you do it for a short time of period, hoping and knowing that people will jump in, and creating the systems where people can jump in, can get flow, so it can be 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 50. And that's what has been happening. Anatolian Grasslands now has a full-time team of 6 person, growing, expect to grow to 15 people in the next 6 to 9 months with the new land projects that are coming in Turkey, but also in Middle East, as well as Europe. And at the same time, we made another move and started a new front in Sweden, where we basically have another Savory Institute hub in Sweden, which has been our comrades, our partner in crime for many years, and we have been developing a lot of ideas together. So now we started, as I said, a new front in Sweden with them in very strong partnership, and we start pushing, for instance, now this time, high-tech enterprises. One project that we are working on now is how to monitor the regeneration process of a land base, of a farm, for instance, in a very cost-effective way using drone imagery and machine learning. So all these titles, who are not me, but sometimes easy to summarize what we do, we can add something like, machine learning or tech entrepreneur. I am not. I mean, I'm none of them, but I'm all of them. I mean, at the same time, I'm just a guy who's trying to be useful. But the model that we have been following, and what is quite also common in regenerative agriculture community, global community, is just like providing your best of resources and skill set by and to enable each other to provide a strong ecosystem where 1 + 1 is equal to 3 instead of 2, or even 4, or even 5. But back to the opportunities in these food systems. When it comes to agriculture, from that angle, when we look at it, in Europe and in Hungary as well, I'm pretty sure land to access for new farmers is very hard, because land prices everywhere is skyrocketing, and young people who are excited to start new enterprise around are usually not able to get that money, of course. So there, for instance, we are looking at, instead of like you getting your little farm and growing old to become a grumpy old farmer, let's get together, let's create socio-economical system where we can have together land bases, which is not a cooperative, where resources are shared. Some resources are shared, but every entrepreneur has their own space to try to succeed, and most importantly, fail. Because failing, we are not talking about much, but this journey is a lot of failing. And failing are the best things that can occur to us. It's just about how best to fail, you know, because we're gonna fail. It's just like making sure that we fail nicely and beautifully without dying, let's say. That's one thing. But also using of the available lands that are idle, be it grasslands, be it farmlands, be it forests, and using those lands through semi-nomadic pastoralist way. That's another super good low-cost way to go in the agriculture system. When it comes to food production, then taking inside back of you, behind you, the funding. That's a strong thing. If you are able to create that ecosystem of people, then people believe in you, and that's how we, for instance, fundraised around 30,000 euro last year for Safimera from our prosumers, only 10, 15 people in 1 week only. And that's how we, for instance, were able to have our new facility in place in Istanbul, in Turkey. I would really suggest everyone to question if you are interested in this, in getting in this journey, or if you are already in this journey, to really start thinking, or if you are already out of the box. But by out of the box, I'm not talking about getting crazy or getting very trying to be different, but actually looking the world around us, and instead of seeing problems and obstacles, because there are a lot of them, we can never stop seeing obstacles. There are infinite numbers of obstacles, but instead like seeing the resources available, because there are even more of them. And all the obstacles and all the resources are just some resources that are mismanaged. So how can we find ways to better manage them? If the farmers in Hungary are so passive and not like innovative enough, well, how can we create systems and models and tools to kind of start mobilizing them into innovation? Looking at from not solving a problem point of view, but saying what are the resources, what is the reality as it is, and how I can make it better by using the untapped resources, whatever resources are, I believe is the key in that sense. I think now I see that I get my 15 minutes done. So I would like to stop and open up the space for questions, which I hope my talk gave some idea and space for it, because then we can have a great conversation around it. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent timing. Questions from the audience.
So I was either mumbling too much, so there is no questions coming.
I have questions, but I let others.
Yeah, and I have a question as well. Like if there is no question.
Wait, Jeff,
okay.
Jeff has a question.
I've got one. Thanks. Great to hear from you. How big of an opportunity do you see on the beef business that you've started?
Yeah, well, thank you, Jeff. It's great to hear from you as well. So yeah, that's a very good one. So when we started Safimera, the primary thing that we started with and still doing is beef and sheep and goat, so red meat, let's say. And the thing that we want to expand it with is the poultry meat, but also holistically managed, regeneratively managed egg production. We also have done some honey. So in Turkish case, and I say Turkish because when you are not EU, the thing is like all this meat especially is kind of almost impossible, not almost, it is impossible to export to EU. Turkey is able to export theoretically only to a few countries when it comes to red meat. So we saw like the limitations around, for instance, red meat, if you want to expand also like through export. So I will say in Turkey scenario, for instance, around beef or around red meat is pretty limited, because the red meat is also already very expensive in Turkey, like even conventional one. So the moment we pay, for instance, 20 to 30% premium on top of the normal market prices to farmers, from which we supply from, and with very low profit margins, almost zero low margins, the price of the meat already gets into a level that many people, or only limited number of people in Turkey, can afford. So I will say with the meat in Turkish standards, in Turkish case, it's very limited. But thinking of Hungary, for instance, in this case, with EU market being open, I will think pretty differently, even though, of course, I'm not an expert on Hungarian dynamics in that case. But then it's all about like finding the let's say, not the niche, but the resources, because we could be stuck in this, like red meat is very hard. What do we do with this? Is that a good idea? But more like we were like, okay, this is a starting point for the regenerative agriculture practices and branding. But what we can untap, and that's what we are trying right now, and it's working so far pretty nicely, is, for instance, untapping Turkish perennial plants capacity. Like when it comes to figs, olives, nuts, all kind of nuts, Turkey is one of the places, right? So how we can like use the momentum we started with the integration of livestock, still using them as a mean to regenerate the landscape and ecosystems, and now divert this production to perennial crops. If you would start from the other way around, it will probably not work. But with this way around, we see great potential, because then you can also start exporting, which creates a lot of added value to farmers, and you can scale up pretty dramatically. And just to, you didn't ask this, but I can just finish on this. When I say scaling up dramatically and so on, I wanna say one thing here. Social entrepreneurs, as far as I see, sometimes are put under the pressure of like, oh, you need to choose. You either gonna think of your pocket, which will make you an entrepreneur, an evil capitalist, greedy person, or you need to choose the social and ecological impact, and not really care about the money. That's still sometimes something that I see sometimes, and I believe is very of a misconception. So my perception in that, just to share, is like we need to make sure that social entrepreneurs are making money, because when I want to turn to the young people, which I was like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, depending on how you see it, and tell them, well, you can do something good, I want to not only speak to already well-being, family-wise or something, young people. I want to be able to speak also to young people who really need to make their living. And thus, we need to make this economically viable and, of course, socially and ecologically viable. I'm just dreaming of a world where we don't use the word social entrepreneur anymore, because all the enterprises are social and ecologically regenerative.
Thank you. You touched a little bit on this social aspect, and that would have been my question, that when you started to build up the whole thing, you recognized the crisis about which you said that it's ecological, economical, and also social. And I know that you were also training farmers, not only young people. So maybe could you say a few words about this?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. As again, like from an ecological point of view, I see it almost unnecessary to talk about it, because it's very obvious, and we talk about it all the time, and we see it now all the time also. When it comes to social and economical one, it's a bit less obvious, I believe. for some of us at least. When it comes to economical one, the rural in Turkey, but also actually kind of everywhere, is dying, and it is expected to die. I mean, when you look at European Union policies, for instance, the rural population needs to go down to 2%, below 2% of the countries in some places. That's the kind of target. So we are dehumanizing the rural areas, which means instead of having local circular economies, viable and living communities in the rural, we want to see those as exploiting places for cities, almost to a point like rural exists to serve the city people or cities. And that's not only a bad idea, but economically speaking, it's a very bad and ineffective way of doing things, because that's not how the economical circles work. And that's what we are seeing. And that's the result of this have been a super empowerment of the rural and of the farmers, just to the extent of like making farming super non-attractive, socially also making the farming the worst thing you can come up with. So farming is for losers. If you are born into it, you try to find your way out of it. And if you are lucky to be not born into it, well, thank your parents for having moved to city back in the time. That's the kind of dilemma or paradigm that we are living in. That's changing. And that's, I believe, one of the most important missions that we have now. I mean, making farming, making production of food by and while regenerating this world, making this world more beautiful than it was. There can be no better, no cool, no more attractive, no more proud job than this. And the beautiful thing is that in today's world, you don't have to become a farmer or a shepherd to do this. I tell you right away, we need so many project managers. We need so many storytellers. We need, and those are the practical needs that I know we have at this moment. I'm not making up. We need quite a few IT people actually writing up softwares and working on the hardwares as well in the projects that we need to develop. So there is a lot of space for many people to get around the idea. So it doesn't mean everybody's gonna be farmer. No, everybody gonna become and realize and become a regenerative land management community member, let's say, an entrepreneur in that sense.
Thank you very much.